You never know what you're going to see out there on the water when you head out for a day of boating. Sometimes it'll be all sunshine and rainbows, and other days you'll get out there and, well, you'll see a 38-meter yacht, as seen here, being raised up off the ocean floor. You guys may remember this one. This is the 38-meter Love Bug that wound up sinking in the Chesapeake Harbor just a few months back. Of course, just a few weeks ago, after it's been sitting on the bottom of the ocean for well over a month, they did finally get it salvaged and raised, just like some of the things we'll see in this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to Cambodia, where this was the scene just a few days ago, when some tourists decided to take a ferry over to the island of Karong and got a little more adventure than they bargained for, when 18 tourists on board the vessel seen here wound up having to be rescued off the Cambodian coast as the vessel winds up going down and sinking. The vessel seen in the images is actually a ferry that is used to carry supplies from Cambodia to the island of Karong, but it's also often used by tourists as a budget-friendly option to get to the island as well, as typically you can board this vessel for as little as $5. I somehow get the feeling though some of these tourists are wishing they might have spent a little more on a little nicer boat. Now fortunately in this situation, there were several Good Samaritan vessels in the area, and they were able to rescue all 18 crew members and tourists who were on board the ferry at the time of the incident. At this time, they have not released information as to what the actual cause of the sinking is. Now, the vessel does appear to be heavily loaded down, as we've seen in the images here, but that is not believed to have contributed to the vessel actually going down. At this time, they are claiming it is quite possibly the result of a faulty bilge pump not being able to keep up with water that was coming on board the vessel that actually brought the vessel to its water-laden demise. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to California, where this was the scene over the past few weeks, where several coastal cities, including places like Santa Cruz and Monterey Bay, have seen a massive infestation or an invasion of anchovies, as seen in the images here, which has led to a massive feeding frenzy by the local animals. But one of the major concerns when something like this happens is going to be a massive die-off. As you can see, the population of anchovies here is so heavy that there's not enough oxygen in the water, and they wind up dying, causing a massive nasty stench and pollution in the water from all the dead fish that the locals have been dealing with for weeks now. Now, this is not a new phenomenon. This is something that's actually occurred multiple times in this area, but the exact cause of this still really has not been determined. A local news media outlet reached out to a researcher at the Monterey Bay Aquarium who said he's been tracking these fish for many years, and he suggested that the high anchovy numbers could be due to a larger climate shift, changes in food availability earlier in their life cycle, and a combination of various other factors. But still at this time, there's no definitive reason as to why this natural phenomenon winds up occurring on the California coast. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us up to the coast of New Jersey, and some of you guys may recognize these first images, as this is the 77-foot commercial trawler, the Susan Rose, that wound up beached on Point Pleasant Beach back in November of 2023, just a little over a year ago, with 4 crew on board. Now, fortunately in this situation, local emergency crews were able to jump into action and assist in getting the 4 crew members safely off the ship and onto the beach, but they were not successful at the time in being able to get this vessel refloated. But after a little bit of time, they did go ahead and make several attempts to try and salvage the boat and get it back out into the water. But unfortunately, during those attempts, once they finally got it off the beach, the vessel wound up sinking a few thousand feet off the coast in about 50 foot of water, causing a hazard to navigation. Well, finally, after a little over a year of sitting on the bottom of the ocean, that hazard of navigation has now officially been raised, as crews have gone out and worked on trying to salvage the boat. The week-long salvage effort to try and raise the Susan Rose was done by Resolve and North Star Marine. It involved work from the Coast Guard and local partner agencies, including the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and other local emergency management authorities. The equipment used is going to be the Resolve Marine RMG 400 lift barge, which they used to pull the vessel off the ground and actually bring it back up to the surface. As for what's going to happen to the Susan Rose, that hasn't quite been determined at this time. But thanks for watching, crew. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit us up on Facebook or Instagram and let us know, and you might see your stories over here. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button.